attention, so I wanted to take it away from me. And I looked over and I knew who he was, and I said, "Hey, Joe, something tells me you might have done something more impressive." And he didn't want to tell us, but
Yeah.
I drug it out of him, and he
Yeah.
goes, "Do you know the Iditarod?"
Yeah.
And I said, "The dog race." And he goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "It's like 300 something miles in the Arctic." And he goes, "Yeah, I ran it." And I was like, "Oh my God."
Wow.
There are
Wow.
different levels of these sort of things. And and then another thing he told me, just because this is entertaining and it kind of makes the race cooler when you know that the founder is a badass,
Yeah.
is we were just talking about workouts, and his workouts have no rhyme or reason. But I was like on the outside, but I know that he wouldn't do that unless he had a reason.
Yeah.
And so he goes, "First thing I do is I roll out of bed," and he doesn't even stand up. He rolls onto the floor at 5 a.m. and he does 100 burpees. And I was like,
Oh my God.
"Why?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, if you start your day with 100 burpees, everything else seems easy." And
Yeah.
so it's just about the contrast.
Yeah.
And that's really what the Spartan race does. It allows you to build your identity around something,
Yes.
something that is an event, because the way you choose to use your time tells you something about who you believe you are.
Yes.
So as soon as someone gets a break, they go and they watch, you know, a show. I don't even know any shows. I was trying to think of one I got none. And so it's watch a show. There's nothing wrong with that. But somewhere in their subconscious is saying, like, "Hey, I'm the type of person that likes to watch TV when I get a break." Nothing wrong with that. But we all get to choose who we want to become.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people think they're born a certain way. And we're not born a certain way. We have personalities and probabilities, but our environment really sculpts us in a way. But when
Yeah.
you're at a higher level of consciousness, you can consciously decide who you want to become. And so a
Yes.
lot of people look at their earlier life and they say, "Well, I wasn't really an athlete." Why? Because you didn't play sports? That's not what an athlete is. An athlete is someone who intentionally and intelligently challenges their mind and body to increase their performance, to get more out of their health and their fitness. And
Yes.
so we're all athletes, and athletics just refers to movement, and your body is made to move. And if you don't use it, you will lose it.
Yes.
But the Spartan races are really taking, I love what you said at the beginning, where you said it's like how we live life. And it really is the way you do one thing is really how you do anything, right? Or everything. And so why why do most of you, I just like to ask, and if you guys know the answer, like why do you want to do this? Like what's your reason for this?
Yeah. Somebody want to answer to that?
Yeah, unmute yourself. Answer. Any of you joining?
How about Pierre? You jumped on the call. What's made you think, Pierre, about wanting to do something like this? What's your motivation behind it, Pierre?
Let me unmute.
Yes.
Yes, it's really about discipline, consistency, and then like Billy said, it's the same way as you're doing training and you're you know um, working your body, you are working for everything. And then yeah, so I am having a trainer 3 times a week, and then
Mhm.
I'm starting to do those races and doing more, and I feel better.
Nice. Those are great reasons.
Yes.
Have you done one yet?
No, I wish I could do this one, but I will be skiing while you are at the Spartan race. It's spring break for us.
Oh, okay. So there's no fear there. It's just a scheduling thing.
But I have the week after, I have an open water race,
Oh, nice.
swimming competition, yeah, and then in the open water. So I'm gonna get there one day.
You're doing it for the right reasons. So I'm excited for you. It's just a matter of scheduling at
Uh,
this point.
Yeah. If you're doing an
yes,
open
thank you.
water race, you got the mindset already, which is everything. Getting
Convinced.
to a
Yes.
Spartan race is the win. I used to think, guys, that um, getting the best time was everything. Like, I want to get a better time. The reality of these Spartan races, as Billy knows, is every year the course is set up differently, and every course is always different. So it's impossible to really effectively gauge your best time with a traditional go down and swim a lap back and forth, whatever. Spartan races is the environment's different. There's so many different moving parts to really say whether or not you ran a better race. It's about getting there and doing your best, but for those of you that are on the fence on whether or not to do it, the cool thing about this particular race is it's the entry level race. Billy said it's a progression. This is a 5K and it's in a county park in Boca Raton or wherever. It's like the easiest one you could ever get into, as far as how difficult is this first race. That's why we set it up this way, is to give everybody a really good entry point. And let's go do one easier one and make sure you like it first. So those of you that have been on the fence, this is the easiest race to get into. Billy, maybe you could just share a little bit about mindset around getting to the race of just diving into it.
Yeah, everything that's ever been created, everything that's ever been achieved first began in the theater of our minds. And until we master that, we master nothing. Until the way you think about something, the way you feel about something changes, the physical world doesn't change. So everything's first created in the mental plane, and then we focus on it. We ask questions, we ponder it, we run it through scenarios, and we start to notice opportunities and patterns, and then we act upon it. And then we meet certain people, but we have this internal guidance because we have this idea, this vision, this North Star that's pulling us forward. And so a lot of people, especially like I have a program just for platinum partners that Tony asked me to make 11 years ago. And so I really have this cool subset of people to work with because they're like-minded. They have similar values. They're different, but they're the same in so many ways because they're achievers. They have certain beliefs that allow them to really create life on their terms. But with certain beliefs also comes certain limitations. So you can have too many beliefs, just like you can have too much of anything. You can be so obsessed with something that other areas of your life start to fall apart. And so mindset, you always want to know what's stopping you. Like, why aren't you doing it? So let's talk about Spartan race, but it could be anything. Like, why are you not following through on something? Because that will tell you your story. And there's such power in understanding. First step is to know thyself. A lot of times we're looking outside of ourselves again and again. We're going to the external. And it's when we look in that we find the answers, because there's a really simple formula for how we create life. Everything is by these thoughts. We think about something. We are the only animals, to our knowledge, that have a neocortex, a prefrontal cortex, where we can imagine things that are not yet here. Where in a mammalian part of the brain or reptilian part of the brain, it is very simple. It's just present. It's like, hey, I smell something, I should go eat it, right? Yeah. That's how it works. But we have this whole other thing, which really can complicate our lives, by the way, but it can also be powerful. It's a double-edged sword. So we're really blessed with three great gifts if we're lucky. I have a friend who was not, but he's incredible. I'll tell you about in a second, but we're all blessed with one, if we're lucky, an able mind. And we've all met somebody, maybe a homeless person that just wasn't well, right? And they're wandering around through life and they need help. And then we get an able body. So an able mind, an able body. And then you get the spark of life, the opportunity to play the game of life. And until we have a reverence for those things, we will never truly appreciate them. And when you understand that the mind is a tool, it's a focusing tool. Whatever we direct it on, whatever we place our attention on grows, it expands, it strengthens. And when you feed it, it becomes more, it gets bigger. But what are we feeding? So the first step in mindset and changing anything is self-awareness. And no one really talks about this, but when you study martial arts, that's the first thing you taught. They'll tell you stand there with your eyes closed. You're like a little kid a lot of times, and telling you feel the air into your nostrils as you breathe. And I gotta tell you, I've been doing it my whole life. It took me till I was like 38 to understand what that even meant. I thought I would be thinking about something else. But learning self-awareness, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Now, humans have different states. And in different states, we have different traits. And one of them is, if there's two types of emotions, if you just simplify it. There are love-based emotions and there's fear-based emotions. Love-based emotions are giving us feedback that whatever we're focusing on, whatever we're placing our attention on, is a good thing. This is like when you get intuition and you feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. That's what that is. But you could do something very good, like doing a Spartan race that could possibly change your life because it expands your identity. You
Yes.
chose to use your free time to do something that you may never done before. Now, when you look in the mirror, you see an athlete, you see what's possible. You realize you have a greater appreciation and reverence for your body. But
Yes.
really, we change things first in our mind and then through in the real world. We act upon the thoughts, we
Yes.
act upon the ideas. And there's a lot of philosophers out there and they say the right thing, but when you actually talk to them, you realize they haven't accomplished much. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But we want to, like Tony talks about this, having the difference between philosophy and experience. Those are
Yeah.
two very different things. You can read a lot of books, but if you read a book about swimming, you probably can't swim. So the way you go to a Spartan race, the way you get good at any sport is you play the game.
Yes.
That's how you do it. There's no special exercise for any of it, unless the obstacle is an exercise like burpees or something, or a farmer's walk. That's why you do it. But people are always looking for like, personalize a program for me. What they don't realize is as a human, your body responds to the same principles. The principles are always the same.
Yeah.
Now, you got to be consistent and then look at different variables and say, okay, where does this person, why do they keep getting injured? Like I have a client right now, he just started a few weeks ago, and he's good. The first thing he said to me is about getting hurt. And I'm like, well, tell me what you're doing. And now I'm seeing his training and I give him a full program. Everything's there. It's complete.
Yeah.
I don't know why anyone would not understand that, but he has an addiction because of his identity. More is better.
Yeah.
But you can do too much, you can do too little. So what you have to understand when you train is to understand the stress recovery cycle. What that means is you push, when you work out, when you train, you challenge the body, you stimulate it, but you actually damage it.
Mhm.
And then you give it the raw materials, the nutrition, the hydration, and time and sleep. And that's when we recover. So it is this constant process of challenging the body, stimulating it, but actually damaging it, and then it adapting and becoming better and stronger in every way. But
Yeah.
what a lot of people do, especially when they first start, is they start, like they'll do a Spartan race. They're like, oh, it's a lot of running. And they just start running and running.
Yeah.
Running's addictive when you do it right. And so what happens is they just start running a lot. Every time you take a stride, like say you're running your fastest, your body's actually coming off the ground slightly. That's your body weight times 5. That's how much force goes through your body.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of
Impact.
stimulus, we should say, right? But how's your nutrition? How's your hydration? Like, oh, say you're not sleeping, you're traveling. Maybe you went to a Tony event. You haven't slept. You did all this emotional stuff. Now your ability to recover is lowered. And then you leave the event and you get sick. Why? Because you went to the event? No, you pushed without filling your cup. And so the purpose of training is to stimulate, not annihilate.
Yes.
And but if you understand that and you accept that this is how the game works, it's much easier. But if you have a mindset where more is better, you will rationalize. So the second part is our brains are designed when we're in states of fear to rationalize and justify whatever we do.
Yes.
And so we got to make sure we're not in that state. So we have to have a high level of self-awareness, but self-honesty, because our brains, when it's in fear, when we're in the ego, wants to control things, and it will create a story because we are storytelling machines. We're awesome at it. That's why you can watch a movie, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we all are. We're just honest about it right now.
Billy, how can we fill that cup after a workout?
That's
How you feel it? Nutrition?
Yeah,
Like there's a bunch of ways.
like
Yeah.
what are the 3 most important elements to fill that cup?
It depends on the type of training, but just generally, it's the first thing is hydration. So
Yeah.
you want to replenish any hydration. And I'll tell you why. So if you're going to do a Spartan race or just want to be awesome in life, if I train a bunch of athletes and I was working with the Washington Redskins, they have a different name now, Commanders, but at the time, the players all hired me. The staff did not want me to be part of it. They wanted to control things, right? And I totally understand that. They didn't know me from anyone.
Yeah.
And they were in camp. And what we did is we looked at the performance. They just did a bunch of testing. So they looked at the team's strength as individuals. And I said, hey, well, let's do this. If we can increase the team's strength just from yesterday, the testing, I get to stick around. And they're like, whatever. Now I knew everything they were doing. They were all dehydrated. They're playing video games all night. They're doing all this stuff. So all we did was rehydrate them. That's it.
Yeah.
But I did a bunch of other stuff to make it look like it was magical, right? Because I didn't want to know what I was doing. I told them later. And then what happened was we just rehydrate them and we increased their strength as a group by more than 8% instantly, just because of hydration. So if you're 1% off on your hydration status, you reduce total body strength by about 10%. Also affects your ability to hold your focus on something. At 2%, it affects our ability to basic math. So it's important that your accountant, when he or she does your taxes, is hydrated. I always tell them that.
So
Right on.
hydration, then before,
Yep.
during, and
So
after.
yeah, hydration. And then if it's a really tough workout,
Yeah.
like it was a long workout, you need to replenish what's called glycogen stores. These are carbohydrates stored in the muscle and liver.
Yes.
And that would be, you would want to get some sort of carbohydrates. I'll give you an exact formula here in a second. And then the third most important thing is you damage tissue. Tissue is protein. So
Yeah.
you need protein. So in order of priority, if it's an intense workout, if someone's like going for a walk, this doesn't apply. This is when you challenge the body, right?
Yes.
So most people don't need carbohydrates after they train. They don't train nearly hard enough. And most people don't understand what intensity is. So when they read a research study says, oh, you do 20 seconds high intensity, 10 seconds recovery. If you do 20 seconds really high intensity, when you do the studies, the subjects are on the floor. They are
Yes.
not getting up for a while. And if we did that, we wouldn't be productive in our lives. So we want to train hard, but also be intelligent.
Yeah.
And so what I would do for most people, say you went for a run and you're sweating. This is what you would do. One, you want to get hydration, ideally with electrolytes. So like unsweetened coconut water, 8 to 16 ounces. The bigger a person is, the more they need. A pinch of sea salt, like an eighth of a teaspoon.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you sodium, magnesium, potassium, which are your electrolytes, your primary electrolytes. And then have your inside the coconut water is natural sugars.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would replenish your glycogen stores.
Yeah.
Then you add some protein, ideally a whey protein, because it is absorbed quickly and it's super easy to digest. But you don't want to get supplements that, like, you don't want to buy a big bag for $30 at Costco. That's not where you get supplements, because when those supplements usually contain impurities. And so you want to get supplements from like a reputable brand that does third-party testing. So they test like what's on the label, it's in it. Between these three companies, you can get everything. It's Designs for Health. They have a subset called Designs for Sport, which is they're tested so athletes don't test positive for anything by accident. So Designs for Health, Thorn, which is like Thorn with an E at the end. And then the final one's Biotics Research. Between those three companies, you can get everything, and it's all third-party tested.
Gotcha.
And so you could do the coconut water with a pinch of sea salt with some whey protein. And you probably want to get some whey protein that is easy to break down. There's actually one that's used for bariatric patients, but it's flavorless and it blends into anything. And it's called Gene Pro. They have allegedly, I haven't tested this. I'm trying to figure out how they do it, but they have a patent on it where they can take say a scoop of protein is 30 grams, but it's this big. They'll get it into a third of the size, so you don't need as much protein powder. But it's super easy to digest, and we've had good results and recovery with it. I don't own any of these things, but just share that. That's the easy one to mix. But that would be like a post-workout recovery shake right there.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Billy. For those people who have been on the fence to get into their first Spartan race or to take that leap of faith, and they've had some limitations or maybe a limiting belief or two,
or 5K, whatever,
or 5K, it doesn't matter what it is. One of the things that I've always been impressed about at the Spartan race is as most people do, we tend to compare, how am I going to do it with this other people that are at this event? And we're all looking around, and at the average Spartan racers, 12 or 16 start times, and you got about 200 people in the pen, and everybody's at a different size, weight, shape, bodies, you name it. And I've done these beast races, and there's people in these races, they're 350 pounds, and they don't look like they've been on a treadmill, much less a quarter-mile track in 15, 20 years. And they find their way to say, you know what, today I'm going to freaking finish this race. And they're so inspirational. But for those that, it's like, I don't feel as if I'm in shape enough. or whatever the story is.
Or next time.
What's a tip you can give? Because one of the things, that you've all taught us in the platinum community is you're either going to be a lion or a lamb. And that's always stuck with me every time I see them. Like, I remember back 10 or 12 years ago, you're a lion or a lamb. What's the one tip you can give our group who's already platinum partners? We've already been in the Tony world, of just getting over the hump and just do the Nike thing and just go fricking do it. What is your tip?
Yeah, and it you mentioned not enough.
Yeah.
So like William James first said this in the early 1900s. He's considered the father of modern psychology, and he says that every one of us has two limiting beliefs. And Tony teaches at UPW. It's the first thing he teaches is that I'm not enough as I am, and if I'm not enough, I won't be loved. And in our primordial brain, our primal center, that if you get kicked out of the group, you're going to probably die because you can't sustain yourself. It's you versus nature. And back in the day, that didn't go very well. Now we live in a cushy environment and we get scared over things that we shouldn't be scared about, right?
Yes.
But we have to understand, like, know thyself. Like, why am I not following through? What's making me hesitate? And ultimately, you have to ask yourself the question of who do you want to be? What type of person do you want to be? Because if you don't consciously decide, the world will sculpt you to their liking, and you won't like it. And so we have to decide, how am I going to show up? There's really two choices. Like, I'm standing on a carpet right now. It says love over fear. And that is the name of the game of life. If you can't master your emotions, then you're going to suffer. Life will have its way with you. You'll be enslaved to yourself. And so when I learned that, like in 2008, I was going through a really tough time. I decided that, one, I'm going to give all my money away so that I have to do it. And I took $10,000 and put it in some like investments I couldn't touch. That way, if a family member had an emergency or something, they're okay. I'm gonna have to pay massive, pay like the cost of taking that money out early would be painful too. So, but everything else, I started $0. And because I was thinking about faith, like faith is the absence of fear. It's doing the thing, but with like you feel the fear, but you do it anyway. So a lot of people say that was courage. I think faith is the ultimate superpower, to believe in something that's not quite there. Because when you think about it, everything in your life was not there until it was. And it became a thing because you thought about it, you imagined, and at some level, you had the faith to know that it will show up if you just keep doing A, B, and C. A, B, and C. So like doing your mindset, getting clear on what you want each day, training, even when you don't feel like it, but doing it intelligently, don't be doing dumb things, then fueling and resting your body, A, B, and C. That everything is about self-mastery, but we're in a world where we get instant gratification. We can hit a button on our phone and talk to someone on the other side of the planet, right? Like we have all these things, and it's wiring us in a way, if we're not careful, that we will have absurd expectations, and we see it everywhere we go. And so instead, I was fortunate because my dad was the pit fighting champion, and he would bring these people to train me ever since I was a little kid. So I had 6 months with each instructor, and my goal was to defeat my instructor. I never did in 6 months because they were masters. There's no way. But my dad would plant that seed in my mind, and I learned patterns. So every martial art is between 4 and 9 patterns. That's it. And the difference between white belt and black belt is the repetitions and a level of skill and precision and efficiency. And so when you look at that, you look at anything, if we're not following through in something, you have to first understand, like, am I looking for a shortcut, or am I focused on learning to love the process? That's what mastery is. Now, in the platinum group, what I've had so many reps, so many clients in this world, most of us are committed achievers. That's what I would call them. And a committed achiever is a good thing. It's the type of person that says, if I work, I'll get it. But it's based around doing. It's always about doing. Like my one client who's learning this, he's doing too much because he values doing stuff. But we're human beings, not doings. Now, they're the first type of people, and it's really important to understand. This is from an old book by George Leonard, who's a Aikido master, called Mastery. It's a little book. It was actually an article in 1987 in Esquire magazine. And that article, Jerry Seinfeld said, changed his life because he became a master. He focused on mastery as he was a comedian. A lot of people don't know, he was on, even after he sold Seinfeld for hundreds of millions of dollars, he still wrote every day. He wrote jokes. He was actually on stage performing every week during that entire time. It was 20 something years. This guy didn't have to do it. but he realized it was about the process.
Yes.
And a comedian that doesn't practice isn't funny. That's what he said. It's a funny way of saying that, I thought.
Yeah.
But there's three types of people. I adjusted it for my experience and for the platinum community. The first type are dabblers. Sometimes people sign up, I never hear from them again. And it's not cheap, right? So I'm just like, all right, they're bait. They were caught up in the moment, right? And they're like, oh yeah, and they see all the before and after pictures, all the success stories, and the other people in the room that have already done it, and they get caught up in it, but they didn't really run through what that meant. Like you wake up and what are you thinking? Do you have a clear enough vision? Do you have enough desire? Can you inspire yourself to act in spite of how you feel?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. That's a dabbler. If they can't, dabbling. And you could be a dabbler in one area of your life, but you could be a master in another or a committed achiever. So most people are committed achievers. They value doing. The dabbler is focused on how they feel. The committed achiever is focused on taking action, which sounds great. But well, I used to be this way most of my life. And I would say things that I thought were cool, like I'm all in or all out. That's why I'm not doing it right now, because I want to do it perfect. I'm trying to be perfect.
Procrastinator.
Yep. And perfection doesn't exist. It's some weird thing we have in our heads that we actually, it allows us to procrastinate, right? But what happens to the committed achiever when it comes to training is they tend to overdo it and then underdo it, overdo it and underdo it. Just think of every gym in January, right? People will push so hard that their body can't recover, and they either get injured or they have crazy expectations because of all the marketing and stuff. And they think they're going to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. And when it doesn't happen instantly, they're like, oh, it's not worth it. And so that's the committed achiever.
Mm-hmm.
But if we want to do anything, we have to change our whole focus. So we want to go from commitment to devotion. Now, the difference between if you're committed in a relationship, you hang around, right? But if you're devoted in a relationship and you're a really good friend to somebody, you are there and you are there as best as you can be. You're not perfect, but you're devoted to being and giving your best. That's what devotion is. When you're committed, you show up. It's like when someone hires a trainer. This used to be a lot of my clients because I used to stand there like a professional rep counter, and they would use me as their reason to show up because they didn't want to get charged, right? So but those people don't stick to it. And I didn't know. I was feeding the monster. And so but I want people to take responsibility, because too much accountability makes people weak. You can have too much coaching. You can I have some really famous clients, and I remember one of them in particular hired a trainer to be there for every workout. And the trainer lived in the house, traveled with them, and they had a chef that made all their food. Did they stick to it? No. Why? It wasn't part of them. They didn't own it. You have to take complete ownership, and that's what mastery is. So you want to go from the committed achiever to the devoted and humble student of self-mastery.
That's an interesting. I gotta check you on that, Billy, because that is humble. That is a very interesting word, because we don't use that word very frequently when we're got the achiever mindset on. So can you just touch on that? That really hit a chord with me. Humility or humbleness, in going from committed to devoted, and where humility would come into play. Thank you for using that word, first of all, but it really struck a chord with me. And I'd love for you to expand on being humble in that process of going from committed to devoted, because I don't think you can get there. Maybe you can without some humility.
Yeah. Well, it's humble is open-mindedness. When you think you know everything, like some of the most challenging clients I ever have are the ones that have been training a long time. They think they know everything. Like, this is what works. And I remember I was like this with gyms, because I own gyms. So I was obviously biased. And I said, you got to go to the gym to get in shape. And then I was on the beach doing pull-ups. It's like an outdoor gym. And there's the most ripped human I ever saw in my life. And we were always there about the same time. So we're like, hey, what's up, man? What's up? Yeah. But this dude was so ridiculous. And I knew he was older than me. And I was like 33 at the time. Yeah. And I said, I was like, hey, Paul, where do you train at? And he looked at me like I was an idiot. and I'm waiting for an answer. He goes, here. I was like, you don't go to a gym? He goes, I never been in a gym a day in my life. I said, well, how, and he's like, I was in prison in solitary confinement for 8 years, and I just did body weight exercises. And he said, "My body is my weapon." That's what he said. I was like, "Wow, that sounds like a movie." And
Wow.
but he was a really cool guy. I never found out what he did, but he's a good guy now. That's all I know.
Yeah.
But he was so shredded, and it shattered my beliefs about what's possible. Then he goes, "You never saw a gymnast?" Meanwhile, I trained gymnasts, but it
Yeah.
just never occurred to me because we trained like I would do body work and stuff on that. We didn't actually train in the gym. And the old one guy, we had this guy who's 140 pounds, but he's jacked. He never did a bench press in his life. And I said, "Hey, you want to see what you can do?" And he was like, "Okay." He got all the way up to 315 pounds, more than twice his body weight.
Wow.
But when you train with like your body weight, when you learn to use your body to work together as one
Yeah.
instead of like a segment, what I mean by that is a lot of times people are in a machine and they're working their legs, but their upper body's completely relaxed.
Yeah.
That never really happens. Like when you run a sprint, your whole body is engaged. You ever look at a sprinter? Their upper body looks like their lower body
Yeah,
because
right.
everything works as one functional unit. So that's why we want to become an athlete. So when you do a push up, you just don't go up and down. You command and demand all your muscles to work. You make every muscle work. And that does a couple of things. One, magnifies results. Two, makes it a moving meditation. Three, it trains your body to never get injured. It bulletproofs you. It's
Mhm.
hard to do and it's humbling because you're used to doing 50 push-ups. Now you're doing 5 because you're pushing and squeezing so hard. It's like having a wet towel and trying to
Yeah.
get the last drop of water out of it. That's where I would look at it that way because when you first learn the technique, what will happen is you'll have everything contracted and then it'll let go. You'll have everything contracted, let go. But the more you do it, just like with anything, focused repetition, like it eradicates every obstacle. Why is that? Like a drop of water going down a mountainside eventually becomes a valley. That's how the Grand Canyon was made. Just it's like slow, consistent, focused repetitions. And so I could talk all day, but I'll get back on track here.
Yeah,
Any
you're
other
doing
questions?
great. You're
Yes,
doing
I get
yes,
excited.
really. We have only 10 days left until the race. What would you recommend to our members who have not started training yet? In
Well,
terms
how to
of, in
how to
terms
prepare
of,
for the 5K, the
yeah,
light race. What would you
yeah.
say would be, other than the mental side that we've invested so
Yeah.
much time on this tonight on just getting to the race, but if you were going to say, hey, if you want to give yourself a little bit of a head start and use this last week and a half ahead of next Saturday,
yeah,
what would be a few things if you've trained so many athletes that are doing OCR races, etc. What would you suggest for those that are just coming into the community? They really haven't raced that much, but they want to do this race next Saturday. What would be a few things? We know hydration pre-race is really important. What else could they
I don't
do
even think
to prepare themselves?
it's not really that complicated.
Yeah,
Like if someone came out and your whole neighborhood was on fire,
yeah,
right? And that's unfortunately happened recently.
yeah,
And you had to go a 5K and there were some walls and obstacles, some cars that were in the way, and you had to climb over them, you would do it because you need to, right?
mhm,
But what if you choose to? And this great family therapist had is the whole philosophy she had was really beautiful. It was like a child has to do things, an adult chooses to do things.
mhm,
And I'm not calling anyone children unless they're, they are, but there's nothing wrong with that. But we want to be aware of that and be honest with ourselves and then take full responsibility. Because if you don't want to do it, that's your choice. It's your life. It doesn't matter. But everyone that's done it was like, hey, it's cool, it's fun, and it
yeah,
was beneficial to me. So I think it'll be beneficial to you. That's where it comes from. But ultimately, I believe that people got to decide for themselves. And I will assure you, it's nothing is as difficult as we make it out in our minds because every achiever is harder on themselves than they are other people. And so I would just say, I would sign up like soon as you're done here and just be like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to have fun. I'm just going to do the best I can. And
yeah,
then the fear of the unknown is what scares people. And so if you just, I'll walk it when I need to, but I'll tell you a story that will make this is 100% true. When obstacle course racing first became a thing, there were all these different ones, and everyone and their mother and their father and their second uncle would do these things in South Florida. And so I owned a gym. We had like 15 trainers, so we had all these clients. We would train these people on the weekends. We built the obstacles, we did stuff. We didn't
yeah,
know what obstacles were going to be. And I remember the first one we went to was like this Viking one. And so like people had the
Yeah,
horns
the
on their
horn, yeah.
head, and they had these big giant turkey legs walking around. It was kind of like one of those Renaissance fairs or something, but it was an obstacle course and it was all
Wow.
muddy. And so everyone has these big, I think they're called steins. I don't drink, so I'm not sure,
Beer
but it's like a
stein, yeah.
stein with beer in it,
Yeah.
like with yeah, and they're drinking, and I'm like, man, these guys are nuts. And then a bunch of women came by, they're doing the same thing. I'm like, they're doing it too, and these people look like they never worked out in their life.
Yeah.
They ran it and had the time of their life. They were goofing around the whole time,
Yeah.
but all of them finished. And I made it a point to make sure, because I was like, we might need it, because there's a part where you swim and they were drinking. And
Yeah.
so I was like, hey guys, these ones are drinking, but there was a rope to hang on to, so
Yeah.
nothing would happen. They're really cautious about these things.
Yeah.
And so, but anyone could do it right now. Like if you were to walk it, right?
Yes.
Just at a normal pace, it's going to take you about 45 minutes. Add 15 minutes for some obstacles. If you can't do an obstacle all the way, you don't have to do it. And they usually have modifications for them too.
Yeah.
And so just make it super easy and fun. And then that will take the fear away.
Yeah.
Because when we go in, and you brought something up really important about comparing yourself to others or competing, someone goes from like an achiever to a master very simply. Like Tony Robbins, yeah, I'm with him every day. He compares himself to no one. It wouldn't even be fair, probably, right?
Love it.
But
I love it.
like he is super creative. So the mindset isn't about competition. Like the greatest athletes I've trained 5 heavyweight boxing champions. None of them care who's on the other side of the ring with them. They don't even, a lot of them don't even look at film of the other person. They could care less, because they compete against themselves. It's you, your lion or your higher self, versus you, the lamb or fear-based self, the part of you that we learned to be when we were kids with our limiting beliefs and stuff.
I'm so curious.
Either we are living from our higher self or our lower self. That's it. And the fear-based self, the lamb mind, is where every regret is born. If you're in love-based emotion, you don't make mistakes. It's almost impossible. But sometimes we mistake love-based emotions. Like maybe you love something so much, it's so important to you, you get needy. Now you have an overexpression of love. So you can have an overexpression or an underexpression. Underexpressions are fear, and then overexpressions are fear. So there's a balance to life, to universe. There's a harmony and order to these things. And our emotions are our internal guidance system. So when you have a really great athlete, or you have someone like Tony Robbins, they are in tune with that. They're using that. They're like, and like Tony will ask a ton of questions. He'll say, Billy, what about this? What about that? And I'm like, why are you asking? He goes, there's just something that doesn't feel right here. And I'm like, oh, what are you noticing? And then we'll get to it. And there's always something that we didn't consider. And so like he has this superpower that he wasn't born with, he developed. But the best athletes are very kinesthetic. They feel things, and they may not be able to explain the technical aspects of something, but they learn through doing it. They're being the athlete. So the answer isn't just to how do you do it? How do you do it? That's the worst question to ask. It's like, who do I need to be in order to do this successfully? And I define success as completion and enjoyment. That's what I define it as. And you make that up for yourself. But if you don't know what victory looks like, if you've never defined the rules of the game, you could give your best effort and not even acknowledge it. And how many times does that happen to achievers, right?
Yeah.
You hit a goal and then you're like, man, I could have done better. And it's like, dude, you crushed it. And then everyone tells you that, but you don't feel that because you weren't in that creative mindset. You were in a competitive mindset. And there's an old phrase, comparison is the thief of joy. And it's true. Like if I compared myself, like my best friend's Tony Robbins, if I compared myself to him, I'd be pretty disappointed in myself every day. You know what I mean? And I remember when I first met him, he actually mentioned that to me. And because I had a birthday coming up, and I wasn't doing that at all. But I was like, do you think I compare myself to you? I'm like, I'm so much better looking than you. And he thought it was funny, and but he told me like he had really good friends in the past that would start to like get jealous of him because they're like, well, if he's doing it, I'm doing it. I understand what his life is required. Like a professional athlete, Tony Robbins, I know what he does all day. I know what that looks like. I don't want that. My full-time job is helping him, but we often don't know, like, okay, I have this goal. We don't take the time to define it. So what does that mean? what does it mean to be super fit and athletic and to love to challenge yourself? What does that look like? Okay, does it look like not just when you're home and you have a routine, but when you travel or the shit hits the fan? What does that look out then? So one of the things I teach clients is I teach them how to shift gears. So you can't train all out every day. You'll get injured. So if you're at a Tony event, you change 15 time zones, you're not sleeping, you got all this stuff going on. Like we talked about earlier, your recovery capacity is compromised. So doing a full 100% workout is not a good idea. You'll overexert yourself. You might get a cold. You might get more overtrained. So now you have disturbed sleep and a whole things. You might get sore. You may tweak a muscle. And so that day I would do a flow workout. And that's like the way I define it is 100% is when you go to the point, you versus you setting personal best, right? So if you usually run a mile in 15 minutes, you're like, I'm going to crush that. If you usually run a mile in 7 minutes, I'm going to crush that. That's 100% full force. I call that a fight workout. You don't do those every time. You got to know when you can. And so a flow workout is active recovery. You're still doing the full workout, but the ferocity is at 80%.
Yes.
You're not going to the point where you break form. You're keeping your form. It's a moving meditation. You're pumping blood through the body, nutrient-rich blood. You are healing the body. At the end of those workouts, you feel incredible. You feel incredible on the other ones, but you get tired after that, right?
Yeah.
These ones are great. And then the lower, like if you're sick or whatever, there's something I call the 10-minute rule. Now, research has validated this. I just made it up because it was short enough for people to do it. And 10 minutes of moderate to challenging intensity has been shown to mitigate the effects of sleep deprivation. Super important. Also, taking a supplement called creatine monohydrate will help mitigate the effects of sleep deprivation too. But say you haven't slept, you're like, oh, I'm not going to train.
You said 10 minutes, Billy. Can you expand on
10
that?
minutes.
Because I think all of us
so
guys are really good at sleep deprivation. We've mastered that.
Yeah.
So, we weren't planning on getting how to get better recovery. So this is some great bonus material, especially for those of us in this room.
I mean, I trained Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
That guy pushes hard. So we created something called MedFit. Like I come up with names to make it sound cool, but MedFit is minimum effective dose. And over the last 7 years, for whatever reason, tons of research has come out on this. What's the minimum effective dose to get the result? So most people are trying to optimize. They don't have the recovery capacity. They don't have a lifestyle to recover from that type of train. Not saying it doesn't work, but a lot of the people they're looking at are on performance enhancing drugs. Yeah. That's their profession. That's what they do. There's nothing wrong with it. It's their choice. But we have to understand that what works for them is pretty much anything, because their body can heal from anything because they're taking super physiological doses of hormones. And so we have to understand. But the 10-minute rule is this. I first learned this from this researcher at Harvard. She's an incredible researcher. And what they were trying to do is get people to follow through on their promises, like going to the gym in January and stuff like that. And what they found is they would start to reduce the dose, the effective dose. And so they eventually arrived to the point, like, hey, you're just going to go to the room you work out in and do 5-minute warm up. That's it. Then decide if you're going to finish the workout or not. And so it started that way. So I'm like, hey, start your workout, review it, set it up, review your North Star, why you're doing this, how you need to show up, and then train for 10 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, reassess. Because a lot of times we're making the decision when we're still laying in bed. And that is a terrible idea. We're not in the proper state. But if you're still feeling it at 10 minutes, that's a really reliable indicator that, hey, let's do the cool down now. That was enough today. That was an effective dose. And 10 minutes is enough to boost immune function too. So if you are not sleeping well and your recovery's taken off, zero exercise is the worst amount of exercise. It's better to do too much than too little if you had to pick one, right? Yeah. But 10 minutes on that day, this is where it requires mastery. Yeah, anyone can do 10 minutes. If you're not willing to 10 minutes, you have to ask yourself, what's your level of commitment here? What's your level of devotion? Because if you're not willing to do 10 minutes, no matter what, you're not going to have what it takes to do this rest of your life. Because the fact of the matter is you need to do this rest of your life. A lot of people start and stop. But when you become the type of person that trains no matter what, like the first thing I never ask myself when I wake up, should I train today? that's an absurd question in my mind.
Yes.
Training literally makes you live longer.
Yeah.
Training literally makes you smarter. It's the ultimate antidepressant. That is just they say there's no stupid questions. That is not true. That is a stupid question. It's how do I need to train today to feel, to be, feel, and give my best? That's the question you want to ask.
Yeah.
And then when you're unsure, do the 10-minute rule and then reassess. A lot of times, most of the time, I would say more than half the time when someone does the 10-minute rule, they end up doing a flow workout. They complete the whole thing.
Yeah. Billy,
Now, but you also
one of our people just asked a great question, and I think I know the answer, but you definitely have the answer. The question that came from our audience today is, Billy, do you ever take a day off of training?
I don't, because I know how to adjust it. So like I literally like to not train is it makes me my best. So like everything changed for me though, because when I first started working out, it was because of some girl in my homeroom, Erin Bailey. Like I noticed that I thought she liked dudes with muscles. So I was like, I'm gonna get some of those, right? It didn't work, by the way, but I kept doing it. I liked it. And it made me better at sports and other girls like that. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna keep doing this. Then I was really good at it. And I learned a lot and I just understood things easy in that world. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna start coaching people. And so I somehow got famous clients. I won the world's best first trainer contest when I was 23 and 24. I won every category. And so like I was like, hey, this must be my thing. And my dad trained me since I was a kid. And so it's just like I had an unfair advantage if you think about it, right? And what happened though is for years it was my job, is my identity, and I'm a disciplined person in my identity. So I trained even though it was my job. I was like, hey, if I'm going to help change people's lives, I need to look the part. I need to be the part. But when like 11 years ago, I started traveling with Tony, and I'm used to being the boss, right? Like I say something and people move, that's an easy life. I didn't realize I was taking it for granted. And now all of a sudden I'm just there to help, and like, I don't have food. I'm like, can I go to the gym? Like, no, we're leaving. We're going to Australia right now. What? Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm in a shitty room.
I need to
3
work
rows
out
down.
first.
And
I need 30 minutes on the tarmac.
yeah.
How
Yeah,
does
so
your
I'm the
best day
guy.
look like?
A recovery day. That's more of a recovery day.
Recovery day.
So
Yeah.
Billy, is there a balance? I think a lot of what you're sharing tonight is you're going a little bit deeper for all of us. We really appreciate it. I think what you're sharing with us is there's balance. So Ned was going to ask how many days you train. Since it's every day, we want to do something physically. Is there a recommended balancing act of 4 active days, a couple days of recovery every other? What is your basic, if people are going to just say, okay, here's a good solid foundation, I haven't worked out in a while and I want to get back into a routine, is there a pattern that you would recommend on full on days versus recovery days? We know we have to recover to get the muscles to not go full out all the damn time. So
it's highly variable based off the person's lifestyle, right? So someone has very poor nutrition or they're fasting all the time because that's popular now. They're not got the same recovery capacity as someone that's eating more food or sleeping better. So if someone has very poor sleep for some reason, which a lot of people do, they can't do as much. They can't recover from a higher dose. So what it comes down to is here's what's optimal. And then this is how you adjust it. So resistance training or strength training 3 times a week.
Yes.
3 times a week.
Then cardiovascular conditioning 3 times a week. One day, that's a free day. So when I first start program, they don't have to do anything on Sunday. If they somehow missed a day I can't believe it, but if they did, they can make it up that day. But eventually, everyone in the group after 3 or 4 months will do something on Sundays, and it's a freestyle day. You can do whatever you want. Now they are choosing to spend their free time active, training. And it could be a walk outside. It could be anything. But what we got to learn to do is shift gears. You can't train like Rocky Balboa every time unless you're on the sauce. And then you got bigger problems later on, right? And so you need to know when you can push it and when you can't. But here are the recovery factors if you want to get into it. So I'll kind of tell you like the training programs is an assessment. So I change the programs every 2 weeks. You guys could do this the same way. You could do it up to 4 weeks. I just do it so people are more entertained. so they don't get bored. But say on the first week of the program, they did 5 rounds of something and they really pushed it. They got 5 rounds just as a general thing. And then the following week, when they go to do that workout again, next Monday, it's a strength workout. They go look in their app, they scroll back and like, hey, last time I did this, I pushed it and I did 5 rounds. I'm going to beat that. I'm going to do 5 rounds in 1 rep or more, or I'm going to add some more resistance to this.
Mm-hmm.
And say they can do that. That's awesome. That means they can recover from the stress they're placing on their bodies. Now, let's say same thing, but they pushed and they could not do 5 rounds. They actually got a little worse. That's telling us that their recovery capabilities are weakened. They're lessened. So if they keep pushing, one, they're probably gonna get frustrated. Two, they're going to lower their immunity. They could get sick if they are really stressed. And then three, they could tweak something. And so you can catch this by looking at the changes in your workout performance. And there's a checklist. And this is super advanced, but anyone can do this because most people just don't know this. Everyone's just like, it's sexy to train really hard and sweat and post on social media. It's not smart though, right? And so what you want to do is the first recovery factor is sleep, quality and quantity of sleep. Most important thing is consistency in sleep. And so like going to bed and waking up about the same time as best you can. Sometimes there's extenuating circumstances, but that's okay. But sleep is the first thing. Second thing is calories, the amount of fuel you put in your body. So calories are energy. That's how we measure energy. It's like gallons of gasoline in a car. It's the amount of total energy you consume. So you could be eating the best foods in the world, but if you're really having 400 calories a day and you need 2,000, you're not going to last very long on that, right? And so calories are the second most important thing. Where do calories come from? Protein, carbs, and fats. Alcohol has calories, but it has no nutrient density. So it's like an empty calorie, right? Still calories though. The next thing is protein. So if you snap your fingers, millions of cells die. And if you're lucky, millions are reproduced. And that's called cell turnover. The process of rebuilding these cells is called protein synthesis, which means we all need a certain amount of protein in order to recover. And so it's your body weight in pounds times 0.8. That's how many grams of protein most people need that are training. If you're not training, you don't need as much, right? So if someone's doing a lot of cardio endurance work, they actually need more protein. So the optimal protein intake daily is 1 gram per pound of body weight. But if you look at your protein and you're doing like a way off of that, gradually build it up. Don't just force it in your body. Gradually build it up in increments. So if you're only having 100, you need to get to 200, go to 125 for a couple of weeks. Let your body get used to that because protein is a little harder to digest, which is great because you burn 20 to 30 calories for every 100 calories of protein you ingest, where carbs and fats is minuscule. And so protein. So we got sleep, calories, protein, then hydration. Hydration is total fluid intake plus electrolytes. The primary electrolytes are sodium chloride, salt, and potassium, magnesium. Now, we don't need nearly as much as they're selling. Like a lot of the electrolytes now have tons of sodium in it. If you look at the typical diet, there's a lot of sodium and not a lot of potassium. It should be flip-flopped. You should have at least twice the amount of potassium as sodium for a healthy fluid balance. And people don't check these things. And then these companies sponsor every podcast and they pay a lot of money for it. And so these people that are called experts are really infomercials. That's what they are. They're bought and sold for. Some of the worst supplements are the primary sponsors of some of the most popular podcasts now. Yeah. So that's hydration. The next one, a lot of people don't know about, is omega-3 fatty acid intake. This is fats that generally come from salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, halibut. Now, or you could take a supplement. A lot of people prefer the supplement. And so the supplement would be a fish oil supplement from one of the companies I mentioned because they do third-party testing. A lot of times they have impurities like mercury in them if you get the cheaper versions. So you want to make sure it's validated. And so Designs for Health makes a product called Xanthomega. It's like XANTH mega. That's a great product because it's krill oil, and krill oil is a phospholipid. That's a fancy way of saying it's more like our cells, so we absorb it more readily. It also contains a whopping dose of something called astaxanthin. It is, if you ever want to be amazed by research, read about astaxanthin. It's the strongest antioxidant that we've yet to discover. And so it has all these other benefits. I don't want to go off on that though. I'll stick to this. So omega-3 fatty acids, but 2 to 3 grams a day. So there's a research study, Dr. Bill Harris. There's a test I run with clients. It's an omega-3 profile. And there's an undesirable range and a desirable range. And if you go from the undesirable range to the desirable range, and you're getting enough of these omega-3 fatty acids, on average, people live 5 years longer.
Wow.
Why is that? Well, our brain and nervous system is made primarily of fat. And fish oils, omega-3 fatty acids, are anti-inflammatory. And they're Mother Nature's cognitive enhancers. And whenever cells can't communicate through the nervous system, they die. So that is why we need a great telecommunication system in the body, and that's our nervous system. And these nutrients support that. So that's the omega-3s. The final one is the X factor. This is mental and emotional distress. Without stress, you would die. I would die. We would all die. We need challenge so that we can be strengthened, that we can survive. And if there weren't any problems, we would probably never grow. We would just like hang out, right?
Yeah.
And so there's two types of stress. There's eustress. It's EU stress. That's beneficial stress. Like when you exercise intelligently and consistently, that's a good stress that makes you better. But if you over exercise and you start running every day and you got shin splints, you're like, oh, I'm going to gut it out and just keep pushing. That's called distress. But the same thing happens with mental and emotional stress. So say there's someone you need to forgive. There's something you need to resolve. It's just eating away at you. You feel like, hey, I need to talk about this. I'm so sorry about this. I really meant to do this and it came out the wrong way. My bad. And then that burden's lifted, right? And so, but we have to decide what is, like, we have to do it for each of ourselves. Like, what is distress for me and what's eustress? Because if we're in fear, we tend to rationalize thing. We tend to blame things outside of us instead of taking full ownership. And so back to the very beginning, we talked about there's 3 prerequisites to change anything in your life: self-awareness, self-honesty, and 100% personal responsibility. Everything that happens in your life may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility to deal with it. It was placed before you for a reason, and you are the one to overcome it.
And place the proper meaning on it. So, our brains are the meaning makers. And wow. For those of you guys on the call, I think that you all share my appreciation for Billy as far as the dumps of value that he just gave all of us. I hope you guys took some notes, and we certainly recorded this so you guys can take some notes later for anybody that didn't capture anything. If anybody in the audience has a question for Billy, now's your chance. He's already gone over a little bit with us tonight. If somebody wants to ask a question, please fire away.
Put it in the chat, please.
Yeah, throw it in the chat and throw it out there.
Hey, Jody Cole, I see you.
Billy, some of my friends are training with you, and they keep telling me how much you changed their life. Sherman Eving.
Oh, sure, he's the best.
And Urban Leroy, they are highly, highly recommending training with you, and I cannot wait to do it. And anybody here looking for a trainer, Billy is your trainer right here.
Here's a great one, Billy. You've mentioned we're all big fans of research, and Tiffany was requesting to know what are your favorite 3 books that maybe something you've been capturing the last 3 or 4 years. What have you been reading? What are a few of your favorite books?
So I'm a nerd. My house is like an explosion of a library, a lab, and a training center. Like literally, it's the weirdest place.
Yeah.
And an altar. And so when someone asked me what are the best books, I would need like a subject, because there's a lot of them. Like I read, like literally, I read thousands of books in my life.
Tonight's based on you've talked a lot about nutrition, and I think our audience has really picked up on it. I'm seeing it like, oh my God, this is good. This is some of the stuff I'm in. How about a favorite book or two on the subject of nutrition? There's so much research that's been done, that some new stuff has come out. What's some stuff about anything in nutrition books that you would recommend that you've got into?
When it comes to nutrition, most diet books have a structure, which it's an article followed by 1,000 recipes. And I got offered, at a time when I gave all my money away, I got offered $30,000 to write a diet book, and I wrote a nutrition book because I didn't want people to diet, because the word diet comes of an old root word that means lifestyle, and that's not what the word diet means anymore. And so when it comes to, but what happened is they're like, hey, we can't publish this. And I was like, why? This is awesome. This is real. I mean, we have all these before and after pictures like this. I have all the proof right there. Like, what do you want? I was like, I have the citations. They're like, no, no, no. There's a template to this. You got to have a villain and you have to have a hero. You got to demonize something and then offer the solution. And then we sell the recipe book that comes with this, and then the companion guide. And so that's the problem with diet books. So if you want to learn nutrition, what you want to do is you want to learn nutrition 101. You want to know, okay, what is protein? What are carbohydrates? Are there different types of carbohydrates? What is sugar? Is sugar actually bad for you? Or are there certain sugars that are bad for you? Or is it when you overeat? Because if you don't know, if you know nutrition 101, you can be exposed to anything and be like, all right, that's horseshit. Like, come on, that overrides the science of everything. And so, like, a lot of times, and when it comes to this stuff, I know it. But in other areas, I'll be like, all right, that sounds good, but I'll question it, just like I do in nutrition or training or anything else. And then you get to the root of it. So just knowing how to ask questions instead of just getting excited, like, oh, you lost 30 pounds. How did you do it? And they may tell you something they did, but that's not why they lost it. They were in a calorie deficit. They had enough protein. They did resistance training. Those were the principles. That's the difference. And so there's an old book that you could start with. It's called Body for Life. And it's basic nutrition, basic exercise. But they had a challenge that really worked. They got a lot of people in shape. This is early 2000s. A guy named Bill Phillips wrote the book. That's a great little book. That is the book Jerry Seinfeld read. Jerry Seinfeld trains like a monster. He does strength training 3 times a week, resistance training, and he does cardio 3 times a week. So that book is what he said got him. That I don't know why I'm talking about Jerry Seinfeld so much, but but I would also read the book Mastery by George Leonard. And if you go on YouTube, look up Mastery George Leonard documentary. And they made like a 45-minute to an hour video interviewing people that are masters of what they do. And it's really entertaining. It's not the same as the book, but you hear firsthand from people that are living it. And you start to notice where you're doing it too.
Nice. One of the questions that Bill's asking about resistance training specifically is, would you recommend heavy lifting or more reps, or is that based on what your outcomes are? Because I know that you're building different muscle on reps versus heavy lifting. But for the average person, I think, what's your take on the type of resistance training that the average person should consider? What questions should they be asking probably around what to select?
Yeah, there's nuance to these things. Like, a lot of people will make an assumption. So you want to know what the goal is. So if we're saying for longevity, health, fitness for a regular person that's not trained for a specific sport, right? Then what you want to look at is the research. This is the thing I had to let go of because I thought I needed fancy equipment. Your muscles do not know the difference between a $10,000 fancy machine and your body weight as long as you challenge it. So you can train. If you train heavy, you're going to get good at lifting heavy things. So if you do 5 reps, you'll get strong. You won't build as much muscle though. So if you want to build more muscle, you want to be at a little higher rep range, and you want to be between like 10 and 30 reps. Actually, that's where it's at. You could do less, but just know that that's going to be more for strength. And the heavier you go, the more fatigue you incur. So if someone does powerlifting, when we have powerlifters and they're doing 1 rep, like they rest like 10 minutes between sets because it is neurologically exhausting. And so that's the thing. So for most people, I would stay with between 10 and 30 reps. And so if you can do, say you can do bodyweight squats and you can do 30, then it's time to add some resistance, add some weight to that, or make it a plyometric and jump when you do it. That would add more resistance, right? More load. And so 10 to 30 is the range where you'll build the same amount of muscle as long as it's challenging.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, Billy. Our last question for the night, we're going to turn it over to Monique before we close out. Monique has a question for Billy. Go ahead, Monique, if you want to just unmute yourself and fire away.
Yeah. Hi, Billy. How you doing?
Hi, Monique. Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Nev, for putting this together. I just wanted to comment. I was online over the weekend doing the UPW,
Mhm.
and I know you gave a 30-day challenge out, which I went quickly online, looked at it, printed it out, and I think it's fantastic. And
Nice.
so I just really wanted to encourage everybody here to take a look at that. And I think I don't know if it's still available, Billy. Maybe you know,
Yeah, I made it
but
just for UPW. So it's billybeck.com
yeah.
/Tony. I believe that's what it is.
Okay. I thought it was
Sure will.
/ UPW.
It might,
But
they might have changed it. So you might want to
okay.
check that.
Okay.
Thanks for
Okay. I went on
sharing.
right away. I've
That's
already
awesome.
downloaded it, but I think it's a great program and it lays everything out for 30 days. So
Oh yeah,
yeah, I don't
and
know,
I
before the
send an
Spartan
email
race,
every
after
day
the
with it.
Spartan race, you guys should look at it.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's kind of you.
You're
Awesome.
welcome.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much for being
Billy,
here, taking the time.
you have the second year in a row, you have been just an absolute blessing for our entire platinum partner community, for the Tony world. We know that you have contributed so much to Tony, who's also contributed so much to all of us to get he's not 32-year-old spring chicken anymore, getting him in shape to go deliver massive value every day. And you have continued to overturn new leaves this year. Wow, you have dropped some major things for us to consider around nutrition, around being disciplined. And we all thought we were just going to learn how to go do another Spartan race or whatever. And we are so grateful for your vast knowledge to inspire all of us. It's absolutely humbling to have you on and to have you support this great community of Platinum Spartans that we have, the people that want to get out there and continue their fitness journey. So thank you on behalf of all of us. Give it up for Billy, guys.
Thank you so much. It was an
Thank
honor
you
to
for
serve.
having
If
us.
you guys ever need
And
anything, just let me know.
we will, and we're looking forward to showing you some pictures here in about a week and a half, 2 weeks of what your inspiration
Oh, I would
all of
love
us.
that.
So we'll definitely throw you some video and some pictures of us having a good time, literally pretty close to your backyard. So
Yes,
thank you again for
Yeah.
joining us tonight. We're so grateful for
we
you.
have a celebration dinner the night of.
Yeah,
The night of the race.
we
If
don't.
you
Yeah,
would like to join us,
you're on the house.
Oh,
If
yes.
you would love to join us, we'll
Yeah.
be assistant if
I
you're
think
able to come. Or if
we're
you,
on the road that time because I was going to run it with you guys.
oh gosh.
So
Oh
that's
my
the,
Well,
God.
one
I
of
was going to
Next
do it
step.
and surprise
one
everyone,
of
but
these years
yeah.
for Billy has kids as well. For anybody that's on this call, there is not a better dad daughter, dad son family event to bring your kids to. One of the platinum partners last year brought their kids. And I know that if Billy, one of these years where he finds a way to join us in his backyard for this Boca Raton race, I know Billy knows the value of bringing your kids along for the ride. So I encourage
Yeah.
everybody.
They have a kids race too.
Yes, for
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, it is man, what a great way to inspire tomorrow's generation through these Spartan races. My son Noah was on the call earlier. He ran these races at 12 or 13 years old, and I knew it set him up for the right type of fitness journey as well early on in the seed. So parents, I recommend that.
Yes.
And Billy, I'm looking forward to meeting your kids and doing these races alongside you one of these years when our schedules align. So thanks again for coming on the call tonight. And on behalf of all the Platinum partners, we look forward to seeing you in the very near future at one of the Tony events. I know we have some stuff coming up this summer. So thanks again. God bless you,
Thank
my
you,
friend.
Billy.
And we really appreciate you. High
Thank
five
you.
and salute you.
Thanks
Have a
for
good
being
night,
here, everybody.
For anybody having questions, please stay tuned. We'll be here a few more minutes.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
Thank
good
Billy.
you.
night, Billy.
Bye.
Have a
Thank
good night,
you.
buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
See you. God love you, Bill.
Hi, guys. Hi.
Hey, so
Hi.
how about that?
Hi.
Wow, huh?
How was that? Let me stop the recording.